Rejection hits hard whether it's that job application you poured your heart into, the person who didn't return your feelings, or even the friend who stopped responding to your messages. It stings, and it's easy to feel like it's a reflection of your worth. But what if I told you that rejection doesn't have to be a crushing blow? What if it could actually become a powerful teacher, guiding you toward resilience and growth? This is where Stoicism comes in, a philosophy that stood the test of time, not as a way to numb yourself to pain, but as a practical tool to navigate life's toughest moments. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's greatest advocates, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." These words are a reminder that while we can't control what happens to us, we can control how we respond. And that's where the magic happens. In this video, we'll explore how Stoic principles like cognitive reframing, resilience, and acceptance can help you turn rejection into an opportunity rather than a setback. So, what if instead of fearing rejection, you could see it as a stepping stone to something greater? Let's dive in. Stoicism offers a powerful lens for understanding rejection through its central teaching, the Dichotomy of Control. At its core, this principle reminds us that some things are within our power while others are not. Imagine standing at the edge of a storm. You can't control the wind or the rain, but you can decide how to respond, whether to seek shelter, brace yourself, or simply observe. Stoicism teaches us to focus only on what we can control, and this mindset is especially relevant when facing rejection. When someone rejects us, it's easy to feel as though the world is against us. But Stoic philosophy invites us to take a step back and examine the situation with clarity. The rejection itself, whether it's not getting the job, the promotion, or the relationship we hoped for, is an external event. It's outside our control. What is within our control, however, is how we interpret and respond to it. Epictetus, one of Stoicism's most influential teachers, famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This distinction between external events and our internal reactions is key to navigating rejection with resilience. Let's take a practical example. Say you've worked hard for a promotion, but it goes to someone else. The decision wasn't yours to make. It was influenced by factors beyond your control, like the preferences of your boss or the needs of the company. But how you process that disappointment, that's entirely up to you. You can choose to dwell on feelings of inadequacy, or you can focus on what you can do, improving your skills, seeking feedback, or even exploring new opportunities elsewhere. The Stoic approach doesn't dismiss the sting of rejection. It simply redirects your energy toward what you can influence. So the next time you face rejection, ask yourself, what aspects of this situation are truly within my control? Is it the outcome itself, or is it how I choose to move forward? By focusing on your response rather than the rejection, you reclaim your power and begin to see setbacks not as failures, but as opportunities to grow. What if rejection isn't the end of the road, but the beginning of a new one? What if it's not a failure, but feedback? This is the core of cognitive reframing, a powerful Stoic practice that helps us see setbacks in a completely different light. The Stoics, like Seneca, believed that adversity wasn't something to fear, it was something to learn from. Seneca once said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." In other words, every rejection, every setback is an opportunity to grow stronger and wiser. Think about a writer who receives harsh feedback on their manuscript. At first, it might feel like a blow to their confidence. But if they reframe that criticism as constructive advice, it becomes a roadmap for improvement. Suddenly, what seemed like a failure transforms into a chance to refine their craft and produce something even better. This is the essence of Stoic reframing. It's not about denying the pain of rejection, but about seeing it as a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. So, how can you apply this to your own life? The next time you face rejection, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can this experience make me better? Maybe it's a chance to reassess your approach, to build resilience, or to discover a new direction you hadn't considered before. By shifting your perspective, you take control of the narrative, turning what feels like a loss into a win. Reframing rejection isn't about pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about choosing to see the value in the experience. It's about understanding that every no brings you closer to a yes, and every setback is a lesson in disguise. So the next time rejection comes knocking, don't slam the door. Open it and ask, what are you here to teach me? Resilience, in the eyes of the Stoics, isn't just about bouncing back. It's about enduring with dignity, strength, and an unshakable inner core. Think of it as the quiet power to stand firm when the winds of life try to knock you down. For Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most renowned Stoic philosophers, resilience wasn't just a concept, it was a lifeline. As a Roman emperor, he faced relentless challenges from political betrayals to personal losses. Yet, through it all, he leaned on Stoic principles to cultivate an unbreakable spirit. His famous work, Meditations, wasn't written for an audience. It was his personal journal, a daily practice of self-reflection and mental fortitude that helped him navigate the chaos of his world. So, how did the Stoics build this kind of resilience? It wasn't through grand gestures or dramatic acts of willpower. It was through small, consistent practices like journaling, meditation, and daily reflection. These habits allowed them to process their emotions, clarify their thoughts, and strengthen their inner resolve. Imagine facing a breakup, for example. The pain might feel overwhelming at first, but by journaling your feelings, reflecting on what you can control, and focusing on your own growth, you begin to build resilience. You start to see rejection not as a crushing blow, but as an opportunity to learn, adapt, and emerge stronger. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. This idea lies at the heart of Stoic resilience. It's not about avoiding hardship or pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about recognizing that while you can't control what happens to you, you can control how you respond, and that's where true strength lies. So, what practices can you adopt to build resilience in the face of rejection? Maybe it's setting aside time each day to reflect, or writing down your thoughts to gain clarity. Or perhaps it's simply reminding yourself that every challenge is a chance to grow. The key is to start small, stay consistent, and trust the process, because resilience isn't something you're born with, it's something you cultivate, one step at a time. Rejection is inevitable, but suffering is optional. This is the cornerstone of Stoic philosophy when it comes to dealing with life's disappointments. The Stoics, particularly thinkers like Epictetus, emphasized that our pain often arises not from the events themselves, but from our resistance to them. Acceptance, then, becomes a powerful tool, one that allows us to face rejection with clarity and calm, rather than turmoil. Take a moment to consider this. What if rejection wasn't something to fear or fight against, but simply a part of life's natural rhythm? Epictetus famously said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." What he's pointing to is the idea that while we can't control what happens to us, we can control how we respond. And that's where acceptance comes in. It's not about giving up or resigning yourself to failure, it's about recognizing reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. Let's break this down with an example. Imagine you've worked hard on a project at work, pouring your energy and creativity into it, only to find out someone else was chosen to lead it instead. Your initial reaction might be frustration, maybe even anger or self-doubt. But what if, instead of resisting this outcome, you paused and asked yourself, is this rejection truly within my control? The answer, of course, is no. What is within your control, however, is how you choose to move forward. Acceptance allows you to redirect your energy toward what you can do, learning from the experience, improving your skills, or even finding new opportunities that align better with your strength. Epictetus put it this way: don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do, and you will go on well. This might sound counterintuitive at first, but think about it. When you stop fighting against reality, you free yourself from the unnecessary weight of disappointment. You stop wasting energy on what you can't change and start focusing on what you can. This shift doesn't just reduce your suffering, it empowers you to take meaningful action. So, how can accepting rejection free you from unnecessary pain? It's simple. By letting go of the struggle against what you can't control, you create space for growth and resilience. Instead of being paralyzed by disappointment, you become more adaptable, more open to new possibilities. Acceptance isn't about liking rejection. It's about understanding that rejection is a part of life, and that your peace of mind doesn't have to depend on avoiding it. When you embrace this mindset, you're no longer at the mercy of external events. You become the author of your own response, and that's where true freedom lies. How much will this rejection matter in a year or even 5 years from now? When we experience rejection, it's easy to feel like the world is ending, like this one moment defines everything. But Stoicism offers a powerful tool to help us step back and see the bigger picture, perspective. The ancient Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, often reminded themselves to view life from a cosmic scale. They asked themselves, in the grand scheme of things, how significant is this? And more often than not, the answer was not very. Take, for example, a missed opportunity, maybe a job you didn't get or a relationship that didn't work out. At the time, it might feel like the only thing that matters, but when you zoom out, you start to see that life is full of twists and turns, and this one moment is just a small part of the journey. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." What he's saying is that while we can't control what happens to us, we can control how we interpret it. And that's where perspective becomes our greatest ally. Here's the thing, most setbacks, even the ones that sting the most, are fleeting in the grand scheme of life. Think about it. How many times have you faced something that felt insurmountable, only to look back months or years later and realize it was just a stepping stone? The Stoics called this practice viewing from above, imagining yourself looking down at your life as if from a mountaintop. It's a way of seeing that rejection, failure, or disappointment is just one tiny dot in the vast canvas of your existence. So, what perspective shift could help you see rejection differently? Maybe it's reminding yourself that this moment is temporary, or perhaps it's focusing on the lessons you can take from the experience rather than the pain it caused. The Stoics believed that every challenge is an opportunity to grow, and rejection is no exception. When you start to see it as a teacher rather than an enemy, its power over you diminishes. This isn't about dismissing your feelings or pretending rejection doesn't hurt. It's about recognizing that, in the long run, it's just one small piece of a much larger story, a story you're still writing. And with the right perspective, you can turn even the toughest moments into stepping stones towards something greater. Stoics teach us to detach from outcomes and focus on our actions. This might sound counterintuitive at first. After all, isn't the point of effort to achieve a specific result? But here's the twist. By shifting our attention away from what we can't control, like the final outcome, and instead placing it firmly on what we can control, our effort, our preparation, our attitude, we free ourselves from the emotional roller coaster of external validation. This mindset doesn't mean we stop caring about results. It means we stop being enslaved by them. Think about it this way. Imagine you're applying for multiple jobs. You've done everything in your power, polished your resume, prepared for interviews, networked with industry professionals. But here's the thing, you can't control whether a hiring manager chooses you. What you can control is how much effort you put into each application, how you present yourself, and how you respond if you're told no. By focusing on the effort rather than the outcome, you take away the power rejection has to define you. Each no becomes less of a personal failure and more of a step in your journey. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it this way: "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare, it is because we do not dare that things are difficult." In other words, the value lies in the daring, in the effort itself. When we tie our self-worth to results, we set ourselves up for disappointment. But when we measure success by the courage and effort we put into our endeavors, rejection loses its sting. It becomes just another part of the process, not the end of the story. So, how can detaching from outcomes help you handle rejection more gracefully? It allows you to see rejection not as a reflection of your worth, but as an inevitable part of striving for something meaningful. It's a reminder that you're in the arena, putting yourself out there, and that's where growth happens. By focusing on what you can control, your effort, your attitude, your persistence, you build resilience. And with that resilience, rejection becomes less of a blow and more of a stepping stone toward your goals. Courage in Stoic philosophy isn't about being fearless, it's about acting with strength and dignity even when fear is present. Imagine the ancient Stoic philosopher Cato the Younger, who, after being defeated in his political efforts, faced his enemies with unshakable resolve. He didn't flee or beg for mercy. Instead, he stood firm, embodying the Stoic ideal of courage. His story reminds us that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it head-on, especially when rejection or failure looms. So, how does this apply to us? Think about the fear of rejection in everyday life. Asking for a promotion, sharing your art with the world, or even speaking up in a meeting. Courage, as the Stoics saw it, is about taking those risks despite the possibility of being turned down or judged. It's not about avoiding rejection, but embracing it as part of the process. As Epictetus once said, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the judgment that something else is more important than fear. Let's take a modern example: public speaking. For many, the fear of being judged or rejected by an audience is paralyzing. But courage comes into play when you step onto that stage anyway, knowing that your message matters more than the fear of criticism. This is Stoic courage in action, choosing to prioritize what's meaningful over what's comfortable. Now, where in your life can you practice this kind of courage? Perhaps it's in applying for a job you're not sure you'll get, or maybe it's in expressing your feelings to someone despite the risk of being misunderstood. Courage isn't about grand gestures. It's found in the small, everyday moments where you choose to face rejection rather than avoid it. By doing so, you build resilience and align yourself with the Stoic virtue of courage, turning fear into an opportunity for growth. What can you be grateful for even in rejection? It might sound counterintuitive, but gratitude has the power to shift your perspective and soften the sting of disappointment. The Stoics believed that even in the face of rejection, there's always something to appreciate. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, made it a daily practice to reflect on what he was grateful for, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. This wasn't just about being optimistic, it was about training his mind to see value in every experience, even the painful ones. Think about it. When you face rejection, you've already taken a step many people avoid. You put yourself out there, you tried, and that alone is worth honoring. Even if the outcome wasn't what you hoped for, there's gratitude to be found in the courage it took to try. As Seneca once said, "What fortune has made yours is not your own." In other words, rejection reminds us that not everything is within our control, and that's okay. It's an opportunity to refocus on what is within your control. your mindset, your resilience, and your ability to grow. Take a moment to reflect. What can you appreciate about your experience of rejection? Maybe it taught you something about yourself, or perhaps it revealed an area where you can improve. Maybe it even redirected you toward a better path you wouldn't have considered otherwise. Gratitude isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about finding the lessons and the silver linings, even in adversity. By practicing gratitude, you're not just surviving rejection, you're transforming it into a tool for growth. Rejection is not failure, it's redirection. Let that sink in for a moment. The Stoics believed that life's setbacks aren't signs of defeat, but rather opportunities to pivot and grow. When we face rejection, it's easy to fall into the trap of labeling it as failure, but that's just an illusion. The truth is, rejection often redirects us towards something better, something we might not have discovered otherwise. Think about it this way. Imagine you pour your heart into a business idea, only to have it fall apart. At first, it feels like a crushing blow. But what if that failure forces you to reevaluate and stumble upon an even more promising opportunity? That's the Stoic perspective in action. They saw life as a river constantly flowing and changing course. Setbacks weren't obstacles, they were bends in the river guiding us toward new paths. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it this way: failure is only the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. What he's saying is that rejection isn't the end of the road. It's a chance to learn, adapt, and move forward with greater wisdom. So here's a question to consider. How can you start seeing rejection as redirection rather than failure? Maybe it's about shifting your mindset, looking for the lessons in every setback, or trusting that life has a way of steering you toward what's meant for you. The Stoics remind us that we don't control everything that happens to us, but we do control how we respond. And sometimes the best response is to embrace the redirection and see where it leads. Where does your sense of self-worth come from? Is it tied to the praise of others, the titles you hold, or the achievements you've racked up? Stoicism challenges us to rethink this entirely. Instead of seeking validation from the outside world, Stoics like Epictetus taught that true self-worth comes from within, from cultivating inner virtue and living in alignment with your principles. Imagine this: you apply for a job you've dreamed of, but you don't get it. It's easy to spiral into self-doubt, thinking, maybe I'm not good enough. But Stoicism would ask, does that rejection actually diminish your value as a person? The answer is no. Your worth isn't determined by a hiring manager's decision or anyone else's opinion. It's rooted in your character, your choices, and your commitment to living a virtuous life. Epictetus put it beautifully when he said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." In other words, your self-worth isn't something others can give or take away. It's a reflection of how well you know yourself and how steadfastly you stay true to your values, no matter what life throws at you. So, how can you strengthen this inner sense of worth? Start by recognizing that external validation is fleeting. It's like chasing the wind, exhausting and ultimately fruitless. Instead, focus on what you can control: your thoughts, your actions, and your reactions. Reflect on your progress, not perfection. Celebrate small victories, like staying calm under pressure or showing kindness when it's hard. These are the moments that build resilience and remind you of your inherent worth, independent of anyone else's approval. By shifting your focus inward, you create a foundation of self-worth that can't be shaken by rejection or criticism. It's not about being perfect, it's about being grounded in who you are, and that, according to Stoicism, is where true strength lies. Mindfulness is one of the most powerful tools Stoicism offers for dealing with rejection. At its core, mindfulness helps us stay present, grounding us in the here and now so we don't spiral into negative thoughts or dwell on what we can't control. The Stoics understood this deeply. They practiced mindfulness through self-awareness and reflection, constantly reminding themselves to focus on the present moment rather than getting lost in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future. Take, for example, receiving a rejection letter. It's natural to feel disappointment, even frustration. But instead of letting those emotions take over, mindfulness encourages us to pause and observe our reactions without judgment. By staying present, we can ask ourselves, what is within my control here? The answer is always the same, our response. We can't change the rejection, but we can choose how we interpret it and move forward. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, put it beautifully. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. This is the essence of mindfulness in Stoicism. It's not about ignoring your emotions or pretending rejection doesn't sting. It's about recognizing that your thoughts and reactions are the only things you truly control. By staying present, you prevent rejection from defining your self-worth or derailing your progress. So, how can mindfulness help you process rejection more effectively? Start by noticing your initial reaction without immediately acting on it. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, what is this moment teaching me? Maybe it's an opportunity to grow, to reassess your goals, or simply to practice resilience. Mindfulness doesn't erase the pain of rejection, but it gives you the clarity to respond with intention rather than react with emotion. And that shift in perspective can make all the difference. What can rejection teach you about humility? It's a question worth sitting with, especially when the sting of rejection feels personal. The Stoics believed humility wasn't just a nice-to-have trait. It was a virtue, a way of staying grounded in the face of life's ups and downs. When we experience rejection, it's easy to let our ego take the wheel. We might feel slighted, overlooked, or even angry. But humility invites us to step back and ask, what can I learn from this? It reminds us that we're not infallible, and that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay, it's human. Take constructive criticism, for example. It's not always easy to hear, but when we approach it with humility, we open ourselves to growth. Instead of defensively pushing back, we can listen, reflect, and ask, is there truth in this? This is where Stoic philosophy shines. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." Humility, in this sense, is the key to unlocking wisdom. It's about recognizing that we don't have all the answers, and that rejection might just be pointing us towards something we need to see. So, how can humility help you grow from rejection? It shifts your perspective. Instead of seeing rejection as a blow to your self-worth, you can view it as an opportunity to refine yourself. Maybe it's a chance to improve a skill, rethink an approach, or simply practice resilience. Humility doesn't mean diminishing your value. It means acknowledging that growth often comes through discomfort. And when you embrace that discomfort with an open mind, you're not just surviving rejection, you're thriving because of it. Letting go is not giving up, it's freeing yourself. This is one of the most profound truths Stoicism teaches us. The Stoics believed that much of our suffering comes from clinging to things we cannot control, whether it's the outcome of a job interview, the way someone responds to us, or even the way life unfolds. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, often emphasized that we cannot dictate what happens to us, but we can always choose how we respond, and sometimes that response begins with letting go. Imagine this, you've poured your heart into a proposal, maybe it's a business idea, a creative project, or even a personal request, and the response you receive is a rejection. It stings. Your first instinct might be to dwell on it, to replay the situation in your mind, wondering what you could have done differently. But here's where Stoicism offers a lifeline. Instead of tying your self-worth to the outcome, you can choose to detach. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It means you refuse to let the uncontrollable define your peace. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. When we hold on to what might have been or what we wish could be, we create unnecessary pain." Letting go is about reclaiming your energy and redirecting it toward what you can influence. It's about saying, "This didn't go my way, but that doesn't mean I'm defeated. I'll focus on what's within my power and move forward." Think about it. What do you need to let go of to move forward? Is it a past rejection, a missed opportunity, or even a fear of what others might think? The act of releasing attachment doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with a simple decision: to stop letting the uncontrollable hold you hostage. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. So, what would it feel like to release that weight, to step into the freedom that comes with letting go? It's not easy, but it's worth it. Because when you stop fighting for control over things you can't change, you create space for peace, growth, and new possibilities. Who can you lean on during times of rejection? This is a question the Stoics would have asked themselves, and it's one we should consider too. Stoicism, often seen as a philosophy of self-reliance, actually places a strong emphasis on the importance of community and supportive relationships. The Stoics understood that while we can't control how others treat us, we can choose who we surround ourselves with, and those choices can make all the difference when life feels heavy. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most famous practitioners, once wrote, "What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee." This simple yet profound idea reminds us that we're not meant to face life's challenges alone. Just as a bee thrives within the hive, we thrive when we're part of a community that uplifts and supports us. Think about it. When you've faced rejection, who's been there to listen, to offer advice, or simply to remind you of your worth? That's the kind of unity the Stoics valued. For example, imagine you've just experienced a major setback. Maybe you didn't get the job you wanted, or a relationship ended unexpectedly. Instead of isolating yourself, what if you reached out to a mentor, a friend, or even a group of like-minded individuals who have been through similar struggles? The Stoics believed in the power of shared wisdom. Seeking guidance from someone who's walked the path before you can help you see rejection not as a failure, but as a stepping stone. So, how can your community help you navigate rejection? It's not just about having people to vent to, though that's important too. A strong community can provide perspective, encouragement, and even practical strategies for moving forward. They can remind you of your strengths when you're feeling weak, and they can help you reframe rejection as an opportunity for growth. After all, the Stoics taught that every challenge is a chance to practice virtue, and who better to help you see that than the people who know and believe in you? The next time you feel the sting of rejection, don't retreat inward. Reach out, lean on your hive, because as the Stoics knew, unity isn't just a comfort, it's a source of strength. Writing helps us clarify our thoughts and emotions, especially when dealing with something as painful as rejection. It's like holding up a mirror to your mind, allowing you to see your feelings more clearly and untangle the chaos that rejection often brings. This is why journaling has been a cornerstone of Stoic practice for centuries. Stoics like Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most famous practitioners, used journaling as a way to reflect on his experiences, process his emotions, and align his actions with his values. His meditations, essentially his personal journal, is a testament to how powerful this practice can be. When you journal about rejection, you're not just venting, you're actively engaging with your thoughts. You're asking yourself questions like, why does this hurt so much? Or, what can I learn from this experience? By putting pen to paper, you create a space to step back and observe your emotions objectively, rather than being overwhelmed by them. For example, imagine you've been turned down for a job you really wanted. Writing about it might help you uncover that your disappointment isn't just about the job itself. it's tied to a deeper fear of failure or self-doubt. Journaling gives you the chance to confront those fears head-on and reframe them. As the author Anais Nin once said, "We write to taste life twice, in the moment and in retrospect." This is the therapeutic power of writing. It allows you to revisit an experience, process it, and ultimately grow from it. So, what can you learn about yourself by journaling about rejection? Maybe you'll discover patterns in how you respond to setbacks or uncover strength you didn't know you had. The act of writing itself becomes a tool for resilience, helping you move forward with greater clarity and purpose. It's not about dwelling on the pain, it's about transforming it into wisdom. How can patience transform your experience of rejection? When we face rejection, our first instinct might be to react, whether that's with frustration, disappointment, or even anger. But the Stoics offer a different perspective. Patience isn't just about waiting, it's about enduring with grace. For them, patience was a cornerstone of virtue, a way to navigate life's challenges without losing sight of what truly matters. It's the ability to stay steady even when things don't go our way, and to trust that time will reveal the right path forward. Take, for example, the experience of being turned down for a job or a project you were passionate about. It's easy to feel defeated, to think that this rejection defines your worth or your future. But what if, instead of rushing to the next opportunity or dwelling on what went wrong, you chose to wait, not passively but with intention? Patience allows you to step back, reflect, and prepare yourself for what comes next. It's not about giving up, it's about giving yourself the space to grow. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, once wrote, "Time heals what reason cannot." This isn't just a comforting thought, it's a reminder that patience has its own kind of power. It allows us to see rejection not as a final verdict, but as a moment in a larger story. When we practice patience, we're not simply enduring, we're building resilience. We're learning to trust that setbacks are temporary, and that every no brings us closer to a yes that aligns with our true path. So, how can patience help you stay resilient in the face of rejection? It's about shifting your perspective. Instead of seeing rejection as a roadblock, patience helps you view it as a detour, a chance to regroup, recalibrate, and move forward with even greater purpose. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it, because when you embrace patience, you're not just waiting for things to get better, you're preparing yourself to meet whatever comes next with strength and clarity. Preparation reduces the sting of rejection. Think about it, when we're caught off guard by a setback, it hits harder. But when we've taken the time to prepare, to brace ourselves mentally, the impact feels less overwhelming. This is where Stoic philosophy shines. The Stoics believed in a practice called premeditatio malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils, or more simply, preparing for the worst. It's not about pessimism, it's about clarity. By envisioning potential challenges ahead of time, we strip away the element of surprise and build resilience in the face of adversity. Take a job interview, for example. You've spent hours polishing your resume, researching the company, and practicing your answers, but what if you don't get the job? The Stoics would encourage you to play that scenario out in your mind. Imagine the rejection letter arriving, the disappointment settling in. Visualize how you'll respond. Will you crumble, or will you remind yourself that this is just one opportunity among many? By mentally rehearsing the possibility of rejection, you're not inviting it, you're disarming it. You're training yourself to see it as a temporary setback, not a permanent failure. Seneca, one of Stoicism's greatest thinkers, put it this way: "What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster." This is a reason for ensuring that nothing ever takes us by surprise. In other words, preparation isn't just about avoiding pain, it's about equipping ourselves to handle it with grace. When we anticipate challenges, we're less likely to be overwhelmed by them. So, how can you prepare yourself to handle rejection better? Start by identifying areas in your life where rejection feels most threatening. Is it in your career, your relationships, or your creative pursuits? Once you've pinpointed those areas, take a moment to sit with the possibility of rejection. What would it look like? How would you feel? And most importantly, how would you move forward? By engaging in this mental exercise, you're not just preparing for the worst, you're building the emotional tools to rise above it. The Stoics knew that life is unpredictable, but they also knew that preparation gives us a sense of control. It's not about avoiding rejection, it's about mastering how we respond to it. And when we do that, we transform rejection from a source of fear into an opportunity for growth. How do you treat yourself after rejection? It's easy to fall into a spiral of self-criticism, replaying every mistake or misstep in your mind. But here's the thing, Stoicism, often seen as a philosophy of toughness and resilience, actually has a deeply compassionate side. The Stoics believed in self-discipline, yes, but they also understood the importance of treating oneself with kindness, especially in moments of failure or rejection. Think about it this way: if a close friend came to you after being rejected, would you berate them for not being good enough? Of course not. You'd likely offer them encouragement, reminding them of their strengths and helping them see the bigger picture. So why do we often withhold that same kindness from ourselves? Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic thinkers, once said, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." But even he recognized that being strict with yourself doesn't mean being cruel. It means holding yourself accountable while also acknowledging your humanity. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you didn't get the job you wanted or the relationship you hoped for didn't work out. Your first instinct might be to blame yourself, to think, if only I'd done this differently, things would have turned out better. But here's where self-compassion comes in. Instead of dwelling on what went wrong, you can choose to forgive yourself. You can remind yourself that rejection doesn't define your worth. It's simply a moment in time, and like all moments, it will pass. The Stoics teach us that we can't control external events, but we can control how we respond to them. And part of that response involves treating ourselves with the same patience and understanding we'd offer to someone else. So ask yourself, how can you show yourself more compassion in moments of rejection? Maybe it's taking a moment to acknowledge your feelings without judgment. Maybe it's reminding yourself of your strengths and the progress you've made. Or maybe it's simply giving yourself permission to rest and recharge. Self-compassion isn't about letting yourself off the hook. It's about recognizing that you're human, and humans make mistakes, face setbacks, and experience rejection. By embracing this balance of self-discipline and kindness, you can navigate rejection with greater ease and resilience, just as the Stoics did. Detachment allows us to experience rejection without being consumed by it. It's not about shutting down emotionally or becoming indifferent to the world around us. Instead, it's about creating a healthy distance between ourselves and the external events that can trigger pain or frustration. The Stoics called this apatheia, a state of mind where we're free from being ruled by our emotions even as we fully engage with life. It's a powerful tool for maintaining inner peace, especially when faced with rejection. The Stoics believed that much of our suffering comes from attaching too much importance to things outside our control. Take criticism, for example. When someone criticizes us, it's easy to take it personally, to let it sting and linger. But the Stoics would remind us that criticism is just an opinion, a reflection of the other person's perspective, not an absolute truth. What matters is how we choose to respond. By practicing detachment, we can observe criticism without letting it define us or disrupt our inner calm. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, put it this way: freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. What he's saying is that true emotional freedom comes from focusing on what we can control, our thoughts, actions, and reactions, and letting go of what we can't. When we detach from the need for external validation or approval, we reclaim our power. Rejection becomes just another event, not a judgment on our worth. So, how can detachment help you maintain peace in the face of rejection? Think of it as creating a mental buffer. When rejection happens, instead of letting it sink into your core, you can observe it, acknowledge it, and then let it pass. It's not about pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about not letting that hurt dictate your next steps. By practicing detachment, you give yourself the space to respond thoughtfully, rather than reacting impulsively. And in that space, you'll find a deeper sense of resilience and peace. What can rejection teach you about yourself and the world? It's a question that might feel uncomfortable to sit with, but it's one the Stoics would argue is essential for growth. Rejection, as painful as it can be, often holds a mirror up to our lives, revealing truths about our values, expectations, and how we perceive the world. And this is where wisdom, one of the core Stoic virtues, comes into play. For the Stoics, wisdom wasn't just about knowing facts or having experience. It was about seeing things as they truly are, free from the distortions of ego, fear, or wishful thinking. It's the tool that helps us navigate rejection with clarity, rather than letting it cloud our judgment or define our self-worth. Take, for example, a failed relationship. It's easy to fall into the trap of blaming ourselves or the other person, spiraling into regret or resentment. But the Stoic approach would be to step back and ask, what can I learn from this? Maybe it reveals a pattern in how you communicate or what you prioritize in relationships. Maybe it shows you where you've been placing too much of your happiness in someone else's hands. These aren't easy realizations, but they're invaluable. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, the very thing that feels like a setback, rejection, can become the path to deeper understanding and growth if we approach it with wisdom. So, what wisdom can you gain from your experiences of rejection? Perhaps it's learning to detach your self-worth from external validation. Maybe it's recognizing that rejection often says more about the other person's perspective or circumstances than it does about your value. Or it could be the simple yet profound realization that you can't control how others respond to you, but you can control how you respond to them. Each rejection, no matter how painful, carries a lesson if you're willing to look for it. And that's the beauty of wisdom. It doesn't erase the sting of rejection, but it gives you the tools to transform that sting into something meaningful. Time is a Stoic ally in overcoming rejection. The Stoics understood that time, in its quiet and unrelenting way, has the power to soften even the sharpest edges of pain. They saw it not just as a measure of days and years, but as a teacher and a healer. Think about it. How often have you looked back on a rejection from years ago and realized it no longer carries the same sting? What once felt like a crushing blow might now seem like a minor bump in the road, or even a turning point that led you to something better. That's the magic of time. It gives us distance, clarity, and the chance to grow. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "Time discovers truth." What he meant was that over time, the emotions that cloud our judgment, like anger, sadness, or embarrassment, begin to fade. What remains is a clearer understanding of what truly matters. When you're in the thick of rejection, it's hard to see beyond the hurt, but time allows you to step back and see the bigger picture. Maybe that rejection wasn't about your worth at all. Maybe it was simply a mismatch of circumstances, timing, or expectations. Time helps you see that. Take a moment to reflect on a past rejection that once felt unbearable. Can you recall how it felt in the moment, and now, looking back, how does it feel? chances are it's not as overwhelming as it once was. That's the Stoic wisdom at work. Time doesn't erase the experience, but it gives you the tools to reinterpret it. It's a reminder that you've survived similar moments before and you'll survive them again. So how can you trust time to help you move past rejection? Start by acknowledging that healing isn't instant, and that's okay. Stoicism teaches us to accept the natural pace of things. Instead of resisting the pain or trying to rush through it, allow yourself to feel it without judgment. Trust that with each passing day, the weight of rejection will lighten, and as it does, you'll find yourself stronger, wiser, and more resilient than before. Time isn't just something you wait out, it's something you grow through. What can you learn from this experience? That's the question Stoics would ask themselves when faced with rejection. Reflection isn't just about dwelling on what went wrong. It's about turning setbacks into stepping stones. The Stoics believed that every failure, every rejection, held a lesson waiting to be uncovered. By reflecting honestly on what happened, you transform the sting of rejection into a tool for growth. Take, for example, a rejected proposal. Instead of letting frustration take over, the Stoic approach would be to step back and ask, what could I have done differently? Was there a misalignment in expectations? Did I communicate clearly enough? These aren't questions meant to blame yourself, but to uncover areas where you can improve. The goal isn't to dwell on the past, but to prepare for the future. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, once said, "Look well into thyself, there is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." This strength comes from reflection, from digging deep into your experiences and extracting wisdom. When you reflect on rejection, you're not just revisiting pain, you're building resilience. You're learning to see setbacks not as roadblocks, but as opportunities to grow stronger, wiser, and more capable. So, what insights can you gain by reflecting on your rejection? Maybe you'll discover patterns in how you approach challenges, or uncover blind spots you didn't realize were there. Perhaps you'll find that the rejection wasn't about you at all, but about circumstances beyond your control. Whatever the case, reflection helps you move forward with clarity and purpose. It's not about erasing the pain of rejection, it's about using that pain to fuel your growth. And that's the power of Stoic reflection. Justice means recognizing the humanity in everyone, including yourself. In Stoic philosophy, justice isn't just about fairness in the external world. It's about how we treat ourselves and others, especially in moments of difficulty or rejection. The Stoics believed that every person, no matter their actions or decisions, deserves to be seen as part of a shared human experience. This perspective can transform how we handle rejection, whether it's a job application, a failed relationship, or even a missed opportunity. Take, for example, receiving a rejection letter. It's easy to feel slighted or frustrated, but the Stoic approach invites us to step back and consider the bigger picture. The person or organization that rejected us isn't acting out of malice, they're simply making a decision based on their own needs, circumstances, or limitations. By practicing justice, we acknowledge their right to make that choice, just as we would want our own decisions to be respected. At the same time, justice calls us to treat ourselves with the same fairness. Instead of spiraling into self-criticism or shame, we can remind ourselves that rejection doesn't define our worth. It's a moment to reflect, learn, and move forward with dignity. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most famous practitioners, once wrote, "What is not good for the swarm is not good for the bee." This idea beautifully captures the Stoic view of justice. Our actions should align with the greater good, and that includes how we respond to rejection. When we act with fairness toward others and ourselves, we contribute to a more harmonious world, even in small ways. So, how can you practice justice in your response to rejection? Start by asking yourself, Am I judging this situation fairly, or am I letting my emotions cloud my perspective? Are I treating myself with the same compassion I'd offer a friend in a similar position? Justice, in this sense, becomes a tool for self-reflection and growth. It's not about suppressing your feelings, but about channeling them into actions that honor your values and respect the humanity of everyone involved. When we approach rejection with this mindset, it becomes less about what we've lost and more about how we can rise above it with integrity and grace. How does nature teach us about acceptance? Think about the seasons for a moment. Winter comes and the world feels barren and cold, but spring always follows, bringing life and renewal. The Stoics saw this cycle as a powerful metaphor for life itself. Just as the seasons change without resistance, they believed we should accept the natural flow of our experiences, both the highs and the lows. Rejection, in this view, isn't a disruption. It's simply part of the pattern, as inevitable as the falling leaves of autumn. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Everything is interwoven, and the web is wholly, none of its parts are unconnected." They are composed harmoniously, and together they compose the world. This idea reminds us that rejection, like every other event, is woven into the fabric of existence. It's not an isolated misfortune, but a thread in the larger tapestry of life. When we resist it, we're essentially fighting against the natural order. But when we align ourselves with nature's rhythms, we find peace in the understanding that rejection, too, has its place. Consider the oak tree. It doesn't resent the wind that bends its branches or the storms that strip its leaves. It adapts, grows stronger, and continues to thrive. In the same way, Stoicism teaches us to see rejection as an opportunity to grow, not as a reason to despair. By embracing the natural order, we can shift our perspective. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" we might ask, "What can I learn from this? How can I grow stronger, just like the oak?" So, how can you align your perspective on rejection with the natural order? Start by observing the world around you. Notice how nature doesn't cling to what's past or fear what's to come. It simply is. When rejection comes your way, try to see it as a moment in a larger cycle, a cycle that includes both loss and renewal. By doing so, you'll find that even the hardest experiences can become stepping stones, guiding you toward a deeper sense of harmony and resilience. Silence allows us to hear our inner wisdom. When faced with rejection, one of the most powerful tools the Stoics relied on was silence, not as a sign of weakness, but as a deliberate pause to process and reflect. Instead of rushing to react, they chose stillness, giving themselves the space to respond with clarity rather than impulse. Imagine this: you've just received bad news, a rejection that stings. Your first instinct might be to lash out, defend yourself, or spiral into self-doubt. But what if instead you took a moment of silence? What if you allowed yourself to step back, breathe, and listen to what your mind and heart are truly saying beneath the noise of emotion? The Stoics believed that silence was a gateway to self-mastery. By stepping away from the chaos of external opinions and immediate reactions, they could better align their responses with reason and virtue. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere can a person find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in their own soul." This stillness isn't about ignoring the pain of rejection. It's about creating a space where you can process it without being overwhelmed. It's in this quiet that we often find the strength to move forward with intention, rather than being swept away by fleeting emotions. Think about how silence can serve you in your own life. When you're rejected, do you immediately fill the void with noise, endless scrolling, venting to friends, or replaying the situation in your mind? Or do you give yourself permission to sit with the discomfort, to let the silence reveal what you truly need to learn or let go of? Silence, in this sense, isn't passive. It's an active choice to reclaim your power, to separate yourself from the external judgment and focus on what you can control. So, how can silence help you respond to rejection more thoughtfully? Perhaps it's taking a walk alone after a difficult conversation, or simply sitting quietly with your thoughts before crafting a reply. It's in these moments of stillness that we often find our most profound insights and the courage to act with integrity. Silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the presence of clarity waiting to guide you through the storm. How can you avoid overreacting to rejection? It's a question that cuts to the heart of our emotional resilience. When faced with rejection, it's easy to let our emotions spiral. Anger, sadness, even self-doubt can take over. But the Stoics offer a powerful tool to counter this: temperance. Temperance is the virtue of moderation, the ability to keep our emotions and actions in balance, even when life throws us off course. It's not about suppressing how we feel, but about responding with clarity and control. Think about a heated argument. In the heat of the moment, it's tempting to lash out or let frustration dictate your words. But temperance asks us to pause, to breathe, and to choose a measured response. The Stoics believed that by practicing moderation in our emotions, we could avoid being swept away by them. They saw temperance as a way to protect our inner peace, even when external circumstances felt chaotic. As Seneca once said, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." By taking a step back, we give ourselves the space to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. So, how does this apply to rejection? Imagine being turned down for a job or a relationship. It's natural to feel hurt or disappointed, but temperance helps us channel those feelings constructively. Instead of spiraling into self-pity or lashing out at others, we can acknowledge the pain without letting it consume us. Temperance teaches us to focus on what we can control: our actions, our mindset, and let go of what we can't. It's about finding equilibrium even when the scales feel tipped against us. Ask yourself, how can temperance help you maintain balance in the face of rejection? Perhaps it's by reminding you not to take things personally, or by helping you see rejection as an opportunity for growth rather than a reflection of your worth. The Stoics believed that practicing temperance wasn't just about avoiding extremes, it was about cultivating a steady, resilient mindset. And in a world where rejection is inevitable, that kind of balance can be a lifeline. Purpose gives us direction when rejection tries to derail us. It's like a compass in a storm. No matter how hard the winds blow, it keeps us moving toward something meaningful. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, for instance, found his sense of purpose not in personal success or avoiding failure, but in serving the greater good. He saw his role as emperor not as a position of power, but as a duty to his people. That sense of purpose helped him navigate countless challenges, including rejection and betrayal, without losing his way. Think about it this way: when rejection hits, it's easy to feel like everything you've worked for is crumbling. But if you have a clear sense of purpose, something bigger than yourself, it becomes easier to see rejection as just a detour, not the end of the road. Let's say you've been turned down for a job you really wanted. It stings, no doubt, but if your purpose is to grow, to contribute, or to create, that rejection can become fuel. Maybe it pushes you to start that passion project you've been putting off, or to refine your skills in a way that makes you even more prepared for the next opportunity. Purpose doesn't erase the pain of rejection, but it gives that pain meaning. As Epictetus once said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. In other words, your purpose isn't just a vague idea, it's a call to action. It's about aligning your actions with what truly matters to you, even when the path gets rocky. So, how can your sense of purpose help you overcome rejection? Maybe it's by reminding you of the impact you want to have, or by giving you a reason to keep going when it feels easier to quit. When you're grounded in purpose, rejection becomes less about what you've lost and more about what you're working toward. It's not the end of the story, it's just a chapter. And with purpose as your guide, the next chapter can be even more meaningful. Who do you need to forgive to move forward? It's a question that might feel uncomfortable, but it's one worth asking. Rejection often leaves us holding on to resentment toward others, toward ourselves, or even toward life itself. The Stoics understood that forgiveness isn't about excusing someone's actions or pretending the pain didn't happen. Instead, it's about freeing ourselves from the weight of bitterness so we can find inner peace. Think about a time when a friend dismissed your idea or turned down an invitation. It's easy to carry that hurt, replaying the moment and wondering what you did wrong. But what if you chose to forgive them, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to let go? The Stoics believed that forgiveness is an act of self-liberation. By releasing the grip of resentment, you reclaim your power and take a step toward emotional freedom. Epictetus once said, "Forgiveness is the key to unlocking the chains of anger and grief." When we forgive, we're not saying the rejection didn't matter. We're saying it no longer controls us. Forgiveness allows us to see the bigger picture. That rejection is often less about us and more about the other person's limitations, fears, or circumstances. It's a reminder that we're all imperfect, and holding on to grudges only keeps us stuck in the past. So, how can forgiveness help you release the pain of rejection? Start by asking yourself who or what you're holding on to. Is it a colleague who overlooked your contribution, a partner who walked away, or maybe it's yourself for not meeting your own expectations? Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending everything is fine. It means choosing to stop letting that pain define your present. It's a way of saying, "I'm ready to move forward unburdened." When you forgive, you create space for growth and healing. You stop carrying the weight of someone else's actions and start focusing on what you can control: your own thoughts, actions, and responses. And that's where true freedom lies. Forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, isn't just an act of kindness toward others. It's an act of self-respect, a way of reclaiming your peace and moving forward with clarity and strength. Perseverance turns rejection into resilience, a truth the Stoics understood deeply. When we face rejection, it's easy to feel defeated, to question our worth, or to wonder if we're on the right path. But Stoicism teaches us that rejection isn't the end of the road. It's an invitation to grow stronger. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, believed that persistence in the face of adversity wasn't just admirable, it was essential. He taught that challenges are opportunities to practice virtue, and perseverance is the bridge that carries us from failure to growth. Think about it this way. Imagine you're applying for jobs, and after multiple rejections, you start to feel like giving up. Each no feels heavier than the last, and doubt begins to creep in. But what if, instead of seeing those rejections as failures, you saw them as steps toward something greater? The Stoics would remind you that every no is a chance to refine your approach, to learn, and to build resilience. Perseverance isn't about blindly pushing forward. It's about moving forward with purpose, even when the path is tough. One of the most powerful rewards of perseverance is that it transforms how we see ourselves. When we persist, we prove to ourselves that we're capable of enduring difficulties and achieving our goals, no matter how many setbacks we face. As the Roman philosopher Seneca once said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." Every rejection, every obstacle becomes a chance to strengthen your resolve and deepen your understanding of what you're truly capable of. So, how can perseverance help you turn rejection into success? It starts with shifting your mindset. Instead of viewing rejection as a reflection of your worth, see it as a stepping stone. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? How can I improve? And most importantly, what's the next step I need to take? Perseverance isn't just about enduring. It's about growing, adapting, and finding new ways to move forward. When you embrace this mindset, rejection stops being a roadblock and becomes a catalyst for progress. Let's take a moment to reflect on what we've explored together. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies one simple but profound truth. Not everything is within our control, and that's okay. What we can control is how we respond to the challenges life throws our way, including rejection. We've talked about resilience, the ability to bounce back stronger when things don't go as planned. We've discussed acceptance, the practice of embracing what we cannot change without letting it define us. And we've emphasized that rejection isn't a measure of your worth. It's a teacher, an opportunity to grow, and a reminder that your value isn't tied to external outcomes. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most respected voices, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." These words remind us that our power lies in our perspective. When you face rejection, it's not the event itself that shapes you, it's how you choose to interpret and respond to it. Will you let it defeat you, or will you use it as fuel to become stronger, wiser, and more grounded in your values? So here's my question for you. How will you apply these Stoic principles the next time rejection knocks on your door? Will you remind yourself of what's within your control? Will you choose resilience over resentment? And will you see rejection not as a failure, but as a stepping stone toward becoming the best version of yourself? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and share how you plan to use Stoic wisdom in your own life. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe for more insights on living with clarity, courage, and calm. Thanks for being here, and remember, every challenge is an invitation.